Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Nutrition for the Family. This is the second module, and we are studying dietary recommendations in this module. In this fifth lecture, we shall be continuing with the dietary guidelines for the Indians. I am Dr. Jaspreet Kaur, presently working as Associate Professor in Government College for Girls, Ludhiana, Punjab, affiliated to Punjab University, Chandigarh. And this project is funded by DTH Swayamprabha, MHRD, New Delhi. In the last lecture, we had studied about the dietary guidelines for Indians given by Indian Council of Medical Research. And we started that lecture with the dietary goals. And after that, we started studying about the 15 dietary guidelines. And in the previous lecture, we had studied about the 7 dietary guidelines. Now we shall be studying about the 8th guideline onward in this lecture. So let's study. What does this 8th guideline say? It says avoid overeating to prevent overweight and obesity. So what is rationale behind this guideline? It says overweight and obesity, it is the causative factor for several chronic and non-communicable diseases including heart disease, diabetes and certain type of cancers. There has been dramatic increase in prevalence of overweight and obesity among all the age groups in the last decade or so. And overweight and obese individuals, we know they are at an enhanced risk of comorbidity such as type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, gallstones, high blood cholesterol and triglycerides, orthopedic disorders such as osteoarthritis, hypertension, and other cardiovascular diseases. Along with that, they are prone to certain types of cancers and psychosocial problems also they can happen. So the imbalance between the energy intake and energy output, it leads to excess accumulation of fat in the various parts of our body. So how to manage overweight and obesity? We have to start slow and steady reduction process of our body weight because the abrupt loss of weight is not sustainable. Severe fasting, it may lead to other health hazards. So it is important to achieve energy balance and appropriate weight for height. And we should encourage everyone around us and ourselves also to be physically active. And we should eat small meals regularly at frequent intervals. A minimum of 30 to 45 minutes of brisk walk or physical activity of moderate intensity, it improves overall health. We should include warm up and cool down periods before and after the exercise regime. And it is advisable that we should go for 45 minutes of daily exercise, which is of moderate intensity, as it will have maximum health benefits. One should cut down on salt, sugar, fatty food, refined foods, soft drinks, and alcohols as they provide empty calories. That means they are uh, lacking important nutrients, but they provide only calories. And it is important that we eat complex carbohydrates, which have low glycemic foods and fiber rich diets. And we should increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and nuts. As we know, all of them, they are really beneficial for all of us. So in other way, they will be helpful in reducing the extra weight also. And we should limit fat intake and shift from the saturated to unsaturated fat. Rather, a balance of saturated fat and unsaturated fat is very important. And one should avoid trans fatty acid rich food such as vanaspati, bakery products, and sweets. And one should use low fat milk. Let's study about guideline number 9. It says we should exercise regularly and be physically active to maintain ideal body weight. So, what is the rationale behind this guideline? It says that regular physical exercises they increase the strength and stamina, and it elevates the good cholesterol and adds pink tinge to our health. Physical activity of moderate intensity it is recommended for health and well-being, and it is essential to maintain ideal body weight by burning excess calories, and it is of vital significance for health, and it helps in prevention of non-communicable diseases also. And physical activity it may reduce the risk of falls and injuries in the elderly. So exercise, it is also a prescriptive medicine. So we should move our body as much as we can. And we can do weight training, we can do some resistance training, endurance, or some aerobic exercises and stay healthy. Now let us move to guideline number 10. It says we should restrict salt intake to minimum. So why this guideline saying restriction of salt? The rationale behind this guideline is the increased salt intake, it may pose health risk and may lead to hypertension and heart diseases. As we know, sodium it is a major electrolyte in the extracellular fluid of our body. Extracellular fluid is the fluid which is outside our cells of body. It plays an important role in the nerve conduction and fluid balance in the body. So, how much water will be there inside the cell, how much should be outside the cell, and in fact, inside our body. The maintenance of sodium balance, it depends upon our kidney function. And if we take high salt, that is sodium chloride, it is associated with high blood pressure, and in some cases, it can cause some stomach cancer. And all foods they contain sodium to for varying degrees. So these requirements they can be met with taking moderate salt intake. Sodium intake it needs to be balanced by the potassium intake. So we should use iron fortified and iodized salt, and it is important that we do not indulge in bakery items which contain hidden sodium. It is there in baking powder, in baking soda, and in all the fried food items or the processed food items, they contain sodium as an essential component for its taste and making it more palatable and demanding. So it is important that we control our salt intake to maximum 1 teaspoon in a day. So let us see what this guidelines 11 says. It says ensure the use of safe and clean foods. Why do we need safe and clean food? As we know that the contaminated and the adulterated foods, they are major causes for several foodborne illnesses in our country. As we know, safe and quality foods, they are essential for maintenance of good health. Naturally occurring toxins or environmental contaminants and adulterants in the food, they can cause health hazards to us. So therefore, consumption of unsafe food, it can lead to many foodborne diseases. Therefore, it is important for us to take some precautions. We should buy foods from reliable sources after careful examination. We should wash vegetables and fruits thoroughly before their use. We should store raw and cooked foods properly and separately to prevent microbial, rodent, or insect invasions. It is important that we refrigerate the perishable food items to increase their shelf life and prevent the contamination. And we should maintain good personal hygiene and keep the cooking and food storage areas clean and safe. And we should keep on this process moving regularly to avoid any kind of invasion. We should always use thoroughly cleaned utensils for cooking and eating purposes. Now let us move to guideline number 12. It says we should adopt right pre-cooking processes and appropriate cooking methods. As we know, healthy and positive food concepts and cooking practices, they are foundations of good health. So let us explore this guideline number 12. There are many cultural factors which play important role in our dietary practices. If our dietary practices are wrong, it can adversely affect our nutrition and health, such as in some cultures there are some fads and there are some beliefs which are not good practices. So we know that the cooking, it is important a practice which makes our food palatable, and it helps in easy digestion of food. As raw food, it is easier to digest by our body. It destroys harmful germs. And if the pre-cooking and the cooking process is faulty, it will lead to loss of so many nutrients. And cooking at high temperatures, it leads to destruction of nutrients and it causes formation of some harmful substances. So we should not cook our food at high temperatures. We should not wash food grains repeatedly before cooking. And it is important that we do not wash vegetables after cutting. And we should not soak the cut vegetables in water for a longer period of time. What will happen if we soak the vegetables after cutting? The B and C vitamins, which are water soluble, they will be leached out of that vegetable and there will be losses of those nutrients. And we should not discard the excess leftover water, which can be used, reused for cooking something else, or we can use sufficient water, which is enough for the cooking. And we should avoid that there is some extra water which has to be discarded, and because it will also contain many water soluble nutrients. And we should cook the food in vessels which are covered with the lids. We should prefer pressure cooker or steamer, and instead of deep frying or roasting, we should prefer these practices. It is important that we encourage consumption of sprouted or fermented foods because it improves the nutrition value. And we should avoid baking soda while cooking pulses and vegetables, as it will cause so many losses inside. It will cause loss of vitamin B, and we should not reheat the leftover food repeatedly, and we should not reheat the leftover oil repeatedly, because all these practices, they cause losses in the nutrient, and many a times they spoil the quality of the food and render it useless. So what does this guideline 13 says? It says drink plenty of water and take beverages in moderation. It says this because Water is most important nutrient for all of us, and it helps in upkeep of our health. So let us see this guideline briefly. Water, we know it is a major constituent of our body. Beverages, they are useful to relieve thirst and to meet the fluid requirements of our body. Some beverages, they provide nutrients, while others, they act as stimulant. We get nutrients from, say, coconut water, but we get stimulation if we take tea. And milk, it is an excellent beverage for all the age groups as it is rich source of many nutrients. It is advisable that we consume at least 300 milliliters of boiled and pasteurized milk daily. We should drink natural and fresh fruit juices instead of carbonated beverages. We can take nimbu pani, or we can take coconut water, or jaljeera can be prepared, sattu can be taken instead of carbonated beverages. And we should prefer tea over coffee because coffee, it contains high amount of caffeine. And we should avoid alcohol, and those who drink, they should limit its intake. Now, let us move on to guideline number 14. It says, minimize the use of processed foods rich in salt, sugar, and fats. As we have already studied in the previous lectures, that the processed foods, they are rich in fats, salt, sugar, and preservatives, and they can pose health risk if they are consumed in larger amounts. Urbanization, it has actually increased the intake and demand of processed foods. And there is a trend towards replacing the traditionally cooked food with the processed food. As we find them more tastier, we find them more convenient, and they are coming in fancy packages. Processed foods, they may not be nutritionally balanced unless they are fortified. And sugar, it is a processed food, it provides empty calories. And we should prefer traditional and homemade foods as they are nutritious, they are fresh, and they do not pose any health risk. Rather, they are providing so many health benefits to us. And we should replace meals with the snack foods. It should be avoided. This is a bad practice. So we should never indulge in snacks. So what happens if we replace our meals with the snack items? First thing is we put some junk stuff, some less nutritious stuff inside our tummy. And what will happen? You will feel satiated. At the same time, you are depriving your body of important nutrients which the meal could have provided. So it should never be replaced with the snacks. And we should limit the consumption of sugar and unhealthy processed foods which provide only empty calories. And there are plenty of food items which should be avoided. For example, we get instant foods. So what are these instant foods? These are those foods which undergo special processing, and they are designed to dissolve or disperse the particles more rapidly in the liquid than the untreated products. For example, instant noodles or soup powders or cornflakes. See, 2 minutes they are ready, or 5 minutes they are ready. That is why they are known as instant foods, and we should not consume them in larger amounts. So the next type of this highly processed foods are fast foods. These foods are already made or cooked to order within minutes of consumption. For example, noodles, burgers, then fried fish, the milkshakes, chips, salads, pizzas, sandwiches, whatever we eat, and when we go to some fast food joint. So they are also very harmful for our health. And let's talk about street food, as all of us, we enjoy it. They comprise a wide range of ready to eat food items, and they contain some beverages which are prepared or sold by the vendors and hawkers also. They come especially in our streets and other, they might be having their fixed kiosk at some public places. For example, someone is serving idli, vada, dosa, or chaat items, etc. They are examples of street foods. Now, they may contain some good nutrients if they have made them by using the real ingredients. But the problem here could be they may be contaminated with some pathogenic organisms. If they are not hygienically prepared, their utensils, the personal hygiene of the vendor, all these are some pressing points which should be taken seriously. And along with that, there are some unhealthy junk foods. So what are those unhealthy junk foods? Unhealthy foods are those which containing little or no protein, no vitamin, no mineral, but they are rich in only either salt or sugar or fat, and they are high in calories. So examples are chocolates, artificially flavored aerated drinks such as sherbets, and artificially flavored. Then we have some, say, Blue Lagoon or something. We get concentrates, and then potato chips, then ice creams, French fries, etc. They So all this type of categories, they should be avoided. So if we avoid all these stuffs, what we should take? We should prefer traditional homemade food, and we should avoid replacing with the snack foods, as I have already discussed that it will be harmful for our body. We should limit the consumption of sugar and unhealthy processed food which provide empty calories. We should prefer fortified processed foods, and we should always read the labels which are given on the container, uh, because then only we will come to know that what is the nutritional value of that food stuff, and we'll be able to understand that what are the different nutrients, what is the shelf life of that product, and what are the additives which have been added to that packaged stuff. Now let us move ahead and talk about guideline number 15. So this is the last guideline which says we should include micronutrient rich foods in the diets of elderly people to enable them to be fit and active. As we know, senior citizens, they need more vitamins and minerals to remain healthy and active. So that is why we need to give them micronutrient rich foods. So let us explore this guideline. The body composition, it changes with the advancing age, and these changes, they affect the nutritional needs of the elderly. Elderly or aged people, they require reduced amount of calories as their lean muscle mass and physical activity, it decrease with the aging. They are more prone to diseases because of lowered food intake, physical inactivity, and resistance to infection. And good healthy eating habits or regular comfort level of physical exercise, they are required to minimize the ill effects of aging, and it will help in improving their quality of life. So elderly people, they should be provided with good amount of protective foods which contains a sufficient amount of proteins, good amount of complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber, so that they can lead a comfortable, healthy life. Elderlies, they need more calcium, iron, zinc, vitamin A, and antioxidants to prevent age-related degenerative diseases, and it is needed for healthy aging process. And that is why it is advisable that they should eat a variety of nutrient-rich food So at this stage, the quality of food is more important than the quantity of the food. And we should match the food intake with the physical activity. If they are physically active, we should increase the energy and other nutrients proportionally. And they should eat food in many divided portions in a day, and they should not be taking heavy meals. Otherwise, they will be having some digestibility issues. They should avoid fried, salty, and spicy foods as they may cause certain kind of irritation in the gastrointestinal tract. And they should consume water to avoid dehydration as they are more prone to dehydration. So it is advisable that they keep on drinking water at regular interval of time. They should exercise regularly to maintain the muscle mass inside their body. So let's summarize what we have studied about the dietary guidelines for the Indian in the last lecture and this lecture. We studied about 15 dietary guidelines. The first dietary guideline says eat variety of foods to ensure a balanced diet. The second guideline says ensure provision of extra food and health care to pregnant and lactating women. And third says promote exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months and encourage breastfeeding till 2 years or as long as one can. And the fourth guideline says we should feed home-based semi-solid foods to the infants after 6 months of their life. The fifth guideline says ensure adequate and appropriate diets for children and adolescents, both in health and sickness. And the sixth guideline says eat plenty of vegetables and fruits. The seventh guideline says ensure moderate use of edible oils and animal foods and very less use of ghee, butter and vanaspati. And in this lecture, we studied other guidelines that says eighth guideline is avoid overeating to prevent overweight and obesity. The ninth guideline says exercise regularly to be physically active to maintain ideal body weight. 10th guideline says restrict salt intake to the minimum. And 11th guideline says we should ensure safe and clean food. Coming to 12th guideline, it says adopt right pre-cooking processes and appropriate cooking methods. 13th guideline focuses on drink plenty of water and takes beverages in moderation. Fourth guideline says minimize the use of processed food rich in salt, sugar and fats. And the last guideline says include micronutrient rich foods in the diet of elderly people to enable them to be fit and active. So this finishes our topic dietary guidelines for Indians, in which we have studied 15 dietary guidelines for us. Thank you very much.